In the heartland of America, a football dynasty was born. Nebraska, once an afterthought in college football, transformed into a powerhouse through vision, innovation, and relentless determination. The story begins in 1962, when Nebraska hired Bob Devaney from Wyoming. The program was struggling, having gone almost a decade without a winning season. Devaney changed everything. He brought a tough, disciplined approach and quickly built a dominant program focused on power football and physical play. By 1970, Devaney's Cornhuskers claimed their first national championship with a perfect 11-0 season. They repeated that in 1971 with what many consider as one of the greatest college football teams to have ever stepped on the field. They demolished Alabama 38-6 in the Orange Bowl in that championship. When Devaney stepped down in 1973, he handed the reins to his offensive coordinator, Tom Osborne. What followed was remarkable consistency. All 25 years as head coach resulted in at least 9 wins, and Osborne built upon Devaney's foundation, but revolutionized the offense with the option attack. That perfectly suited for the tough, farm-raised athletes that Nebraska could recruit. While championship glory initially eluded Osborne, the breakthrough finally came in the 1990s when Osborne's Cornhuskers captured 3 national championships in 4 years. The 1995 team, perhaps college football's most dominant ever, averaged over 50 points per game and crushed Florida 62-24 in the national championship. Nebraska's success wasn't built on star recruits, but rather on player development. They transformed overlooked prospects and walk-ons into All-Americans through superior coaching, unprecedented physical development, and an unwavering belief in their system. And for almost 4 decades, Nebraska football represented consistency, power, and excellence, a red wave that washed over college football and changed the game forever. But even the mightiest empires show cracks before they crumble. For Nebraska, the warning signs appeared shortly after Osborne's departure in 1997. The transition to Frank Solich seemed smooth at first. A longtime Nebraska assistant, Solich led the team to a 12-1 season and a number 3 ranking in 1999. But beneath the surface, the foundation was weakening. Nebraska has yet to match that 12-1 record in these last 25 years. And then came November 23, 2001, a date that still haunts Husker Nation. Colorado stormed into Lincoln and delivered a stunning 62-36 beatdown. The Buffaloes didn't just beat Nebraska, they exposed them, running for almost 400 yards. However, Nebraska still somehow reached the national championship game that season thanks to previous wins in the season over Notre Dame and Oklahoma, who was ranked second at the time. However, they did get beat down by Miami on national television, and the feeling of invincibility throughout the 90s was shattered. 2002's 7-7 finish was Nebraska's worst since 1961, and in 2003, they lost to Missouri for the first time in 25 years. Solich was fired shortly after, despite posting 10 wins in his final season, a mark most programs would celebrate, but at Nebraska, the bar was a little higher, and expectations have been set impossibly high. Bill Callahan arrived in 2004, attempting to transform Nebraska's smash-mouth identity into a West Coast passing attack. It was basically like forcing a square peg into a round hole. And in 2004, they finished with their losing record for the first time since 1961, and missed a bowl game for the first time in 36 years. And in 2007, Kansas, who is historically a conference bottom dweller, they humiliated Nebraska with 76 points, the most the Black Shirts have ever surrendered in program history. Bo Pelini's hire in 2008 was meant to restore Nebraska's defensive prowess and traditional values. Initially, it seemed to work as the program got back to their winning ways. They won 10 games in his first couple seasons, and Pelini never finished with more than 4 losses in his entire tenure. They fought for conference championships and appeared they would turn the corner and return to national relevancy, until they didn't. Let's focus on Nebraska's time in the Big Ten. At the time, Pelini came off of consecutive 10-win finishes and Big 12 title appearances, along with a Holiday Bowl over Arizona. Coming into 2011 with a fresh start in the Big Ten, Nebraska finished 17th in the nation in recruiting. However, life in the Big Ten wasn't as easy as Nebraska had hoped. They finished 9-4, but a losing record in top 25 games, and Nebraska would never win 2 ranked games in a season ever again. And if you look in the graphic, Nebraska's recruiting mark would go down, their win-loss record never got better under Pelini, and they would continue to drop more and more key pivotal games. A team that would constantly appear in the polls struggled to find consistency and never finished the season ranked after the 2012 season. The Huskers saw a rise in recruiting when hometown hero Scott Frost came to town, but I'm not even going to go there. and they lost 29 straight games against ranked opponents going back to 2016, their last win being in early September against Oregon. But since they've lost 6 games in 2021, all by single digits I should say, 2 in 2020 and 3 in every single other season. Let's move to a different graphic, and it's their home field advantage. Yes, Nebraska's kept their sellout streak. It's been going since 1962, since the Devaney days. I think they broke 400 this past season. I think they're at 403. But all throughout their tenure in the Big Ten, more uncertainty and more skepticism began to fill in the hearts of Husker Nation, whether they want to admit it or not. Let's look at the data. In the bottom of your screen, you can see what each category actually means. And yes, there were seasons where Husker Nation proved invaluable, and I'm looking at 2014, 2016, and 2018. But some of the data is skewed because those years it was either Nebraska beating up inferior opponents at home or getting blasted on the road. But the big takeaway is the inconsistency, and I'm sure we all remember the daunting feel of stepping in the Memorial Stadium in front of the Sea of Red. It's just not like that anymore. So here are some graphs. You got the win percentage against power conference teams along with the top 25 win percentage. Generally, it's been declining. Here you have the recruiting percentile. It spikes when Scott Frost and Matt Rhule came to town, but declining everywhere else. You have the point differential, and Nebraska's been really bad in that. They haven't seen a positive point differential against power conference teams since 2015. And then you have the final rank in the season, a mark they haven't hit in 2012. Then you have the 3 home field advantage statistics from the second spreadsheet that I showed. And again, the big takeaway here is the inconsistency from a once daunting fan base. And if you put all 8 graphs on top of each other, this is what it looks like. And if you take the LSRL for each season, a value that represents the data points with the least amount of error possible, it looks like this. And I added each of the tenures of each head coach as well. Pelini finished on a decline, Riley was mediocre at best, Frost was the dark ages, but Rhule is on the up and coming, and more on that later. But the 2010s marked Nebraska's painful transformation from a perennial powerhouse to a program defined by disappointment. What began as occasional setbacks evolved into consistent mediocrity and then the freefall under Scott Frost. Quite a number of devastating games tell the story of this collapse. I'm going to focus on 5 of them here. All of these heavily changed the trajectory of Nebraska football even more so than in the 2000s. In the 2012 Big Ten Championship, Nebraska entered as a favorite with a 10-2 record. Wisconsin was only 7-5, so it was a chance for Nebraska to re-enter the national picture. However, Wisconsin laid the smackdown on them. They ran the ball up their throats with almost 550 yards on the ground. It was very humiliating, especially on the conference's biggest stage, and it revealed a troubling pattern under Pelini that when the Huskers lost, they often lost spectacularly. The margin was big, but it was just the beginning. In 2014, Pelini had tons of heat, especially after his infamous quote after a season-ending loss to Iowa.
They want to fire me, go ahead. I believe in what I've done. I don't apologize for what I've done. I don't apologize to you. I don't apologize to anybody.
Failing to return to national relevancy, Nebraska kicked Pelini to the can, and their postseason struggles continued in a loss to USC. This marked their 6th postseason defeat in 7 tries. More troubling, Nebraska completed their first season without a single victory over a ranked opponent since 2008. Mike Riley's era in 2015 began with heartbreak as BYU connected on a Hail Mary as time expired. Beyond the dramatic finish, this loss ended Nebraska's 29-year season-opening win streak, the longest in the nation at the time, and Nebraska would fail to appear in the rankings all season long, also for the first time since 2008. With the program's decline accelerating, the final game of Riley's tenure in 2017 was a complete disaster. Iowa physically dominated Nebraska for the 2nd straight year, cementing a new hierarchy in what was becoming a one-sided rivalry, and this embarrassment capped Nebraska's worst season since 1958, missing a bowl game for just the 3rd time since 1968. In 2018, native son Scott Frost was supposed to be the savior, but his early tenure proved disastrous. He started at 0-6, and in that span, after losing to Colorado, Nebraska fell at home to Troy, their 3rd loss to a non-Power 5 school in 3 years, crazy enough. You have that BYU game, this game, and also NIU in 2017. And the special teams collapses began to define Scott Frost's tenure, and that was exemplified in this loss to Troy. But all of these losses were on the road of Nebraska's descent to absolute misery. So what game started this descent? And I have one circled. It's week 2 of 2014. Nebraska is favored by 36.5 points against McNeese.
No one in this stadium can believe the scoreboard right now. It is silent. You want to know what 87,000 people in one place sounds like when it's silent? It's this right now.
Funny enough, they just upset Clemson in March Madness, but the 31-24 score alone tells the story. Nebraska found itself tied with an FCS opponent with 30 seconds left at Memorial Stadium. The Blackshirts gave up 422 all-purpose yards to a team they had no business giving up that many to, and that included 50 yards to two different quarterbacks, 50 yards to two different running backs, and they lost the time of possession battle by over 10 minutes. It was a miraculous 58-yard touchdown from Amir Abdullah that saved the Huskers from utter disaster against an FCS team, and yes, I know they won, but that's what makes this unique. The once fearsome Memorial Stadium atmosphere was replaced by stunned silence. The mighty Huskers had nearly suffered their first loss to a non-FBS team since 1942, and the McNeese game just didn't expose Nebraska's weaknesses, it revealed the fragility of their entire identity. Yes, the scoreboard showed a victory, but everyone in Lincoln knew the truth. This wasn't Nebraska football anymore, and it never would be. The 87,000 fans in attendance and the millions watching at home collectively recognized what they were witnessing: the death of an era. The McNeese disaster unironically sent Nebraska 10 years, yet Pelini, despite never winning fewer than 9 games, was fired after the 2014 season thanks to his hot temper. Mike Riley's gentlemanly approach produced a mediocre 19-19 record over 3 seasons, Nebraska's worst coaching tenure since the late 1950s. Then you have Scott Frost, whose homecoming turned into a nightmare. Under Frost, Nebraska perfected the art of the close one-possession loss. He never had a year with a winning record in one-possession games, culminating in that abysmal 2021 campaign. And from 2017 to 2024, Nebraska went 12-38 in one-score games. It wasn't just losing, but it was losing in the most painful way possible, game after game, year after year. And Frost's entire coaching tenure made Riley's seem rather good, and the once famed home field advantage began to evaporate. Teams no longer feared coming to Lincoln, and Nebraska wasn't just losing games, but they were losing their soul. The proud program built by Devaney and Osborne had become unrecognizable, trapped in a purgatory of mediocrity. So what began with a near loss to an FCS team in 2014 had become a decade-long search for Nebraska's lost identity. The dynasty had not just declined, but it had collapsed entirely. But through the darkness of defeat, a new light emerges in Lincoln. Enter Matt Rhule, college football's proven program rebuilder. Rhule's career tells a compelling story of patience and transformation. At Temple, he inherited a 4-7 team, stumbled to 2-10 in his first season, but by year 3, the Owls were 10-4 with a conference championship. At Baylor, the pattern repeated, taking over a program devastated by scandal. Rhule went 1-11 in 2017, but just 2 years later, they were 11-3 and playing in the Sugar Bowl. Now Nebraska is witnessing the same methodical rebuild, taking the reins after a 4-8 season in 2022. Rhule debuted at 5-7 in 2023, but he then guided the Huskers to bowl eligibility for the first time in 8 years just 3 months ago. So if history repeats itself, 2025, which is Rhule's 3rd season at Nebraska, that could mark a big one for Nebraska's return to national relevance. The foundation has already been laid. Nebraska's 2025 recruiting class ranks 21st nationally, the best since 2019, bringing elite talent to Lincoln. Nebraska also hauls in an 11th ranked transfer portal class, and what separates Rhule isn't just winning, but it's how he builds. He emphasizes culture, development, and identity, the trademarks of Nebraska's glory days: physical play, attention to detail, and unwavering toughness. Those traits are gradually returning back to Memorial Stadium. Players are starting to believe again, and in college football, belief is everything. After years of wandering in the wilderness, Nebraska football appears to finally be finding its way home. For the Big Red faithful who've endured decades of disappointment, the message is clear: the long night in Lincoln may finally be coming to an end.